Children in your classroom are all working individually and in small groups independently on all the work that they choose. And there's going to be a fair amount of paper and product that gets developed from a lot of their different works. So what you also need to be considering is, how do the children manage all of their work? How do they keep track of things that are in process? And so you have to have some sort of work management system in place to guide them. As the children get older and get to know themselves better as workers and learners, they can start to take more responsibility for this and develop their own systems. But particularly children new to the classroom, they need some structure to help them manage their work. So we know the children all have their work journals where they're tracking their day and keeping track of what they've done and when they've done it. But what about the various papers? So perhaps children are doing math problems. What are they writing that down on? Where do they get that paper? Where do they store that paper when they're finished with it or it's in process? So you probably want the children to have some sort of work folder or binder or some place where they can keep work that is in process. Some people use notebooks for this, and the only thing about a notebook to consider is just that if all of it's kept in a notebook, when children make a mistake or they're not as happy with a piece of work, they're kind of stuck with it still there. So if, that's one thing, if they don't like the work, if they can just rip it out of the notebook, then yeah, notebooks work well. The nice thing about notebooks is you don't have, multiple pieces of paper everywhere. Anyone who spent any time with 6 or 7-year-olds know that they can accumulate big stacks of paper in their work. So some sort of system. I used a work folder. I had one side for paper that was in progress, work in progress, and one side that was finished work. And then when the children had finished work, I'd periodically go through it with them, and we'd check it and talk about it if that was important. Anything that they wanted to keep in their portfolio for their cumulative record, they could do that, and the rest they could take home or recycle. It didn't matter to me. So think about, where do they store all of this? So they've got their own folders, or they've got their own binders or notebooks or whatever you're using. Where are those stored in the classroom? Does each child have a work cubby or a workspace where that can be put? Do you have a shelf where all the binders are kept and children can go get them as they need? This is a system you have to consider and communicate to the children. Now, this works for paper work, but what about when they're making a diorama of something, or they're building a scale model of something, or anything else that takes up more space, or they've done a bunch of watercolor or block printing, or what about their handwork? So you also have to think through, how is all that work managed? Where is it stored when it's in process? What happens to it when it goes home? For those sorts of projects, I would take a picture of it so they could put it in their portfolio if they wanted. And also for if, it's likely a group project, so for whoever wasn't going to take it home, they at least could have a picture of it. But you'll have to have a space in your room for works in progress like that are 3-dimensional or wet or any number of other things. And then think how you keep track of that. It's not as easy to see in the work folder during an individual meeting with the child. So you will want to be sure that you're still monitoring the progress and helping children to accomplish those bigger projects as well. So a variety of things to consider as you're looking at work management. And I can tell you that I sort of tweaked my work management systems year to year and sometimes mid-year, depending. So feel comfortable doing that. What worked one year might need to be shifted for another. So maybe there's loose papers and binders one year and notebooks and folders the next. Whatever's going to work for your group, just be conscious and think about it. And also recognize that while it can be useful to have one system for all the children, it might be that you also have to shift it for some children who just need more structure or less, or have their own opinions about how they can manage their own work. And that certainly, as I said, will emerge as they get older. But at the start of a year, I would start with some systems in place, and then you can negotiate and work on them with individual children as you need.